Welcome back to Block TV, and you're watching The Good Block, where we get the chance to meet the people making a difference in the world by using cryptocurrencies and the underlying blockchain technology. A platform doing just that is Sempo. The company is on a mission to build open ecosystems that connect financially isolated communities with each other and the global economy. To tell us how, we are joined in studio by Ziv Kainan, digital assets expert and advisor for blockchain social impact, and via Zoom by Nick Wilson, co-founder at Sempo. Hi, Nick. Thanks for joining us via Zoom, and hello, Ziv. Thanks for being in studio with us today.
Great being here.
Now, throwing it out to Nick, that is a hefty goal, what I just read out there in my introduction. How is it that Sempo is working toward connecting the financially isolated?
Absolutely. So, we started Sempo because we wanted to make it easier for NGOs to get cash to people affected by crises. There's a lot of data out there that shows that the best way to help people affected by disasters is just to give them money. 70% of Syrian refugees have actually sold the aid they've been given to buy things that they actually want. So it sort of leaves you with the conclusion that the best way to help people is just give them money. But it's really hard to actually do this in practice. So we decided to build a platform that uses cryptocurrency to basically get money to people who have otherwise very little access to financial services. We started there and just pushed more broadly into the financial inclusion spaces that we realized we're actually able to do, have impact for people who were totally underserved.
Yeah, and essentially banking the underbanked, which we know is a big ideological issue and has become one in the sphere as we kind of go on, and we'll touch on that later. But as part of your project, you guys have worked, I believe it is with the Lebanese, right, and Greece on a bunch of different projects. But you have one particular project, the Vanuatu project, that you guys collaborated with Oxfam International, I believe, and this UK nonprofit, huge, right, big reach globally. Mm-hmm. What was Sempo's role in that project? What did you want to achieve, and what can you tell us about the outcome?
Yeah, so this was really exciting for us. The project we did with Oxfam in Vanuatu was the first time an NGO or any organization had really used blockchain or cryptocurrency rather in a serious way for aid. And so this was their first sort of cut at this. Sempo built the technology stack behind this process. We actually traveled over to Vanuatu and actually developed a lot of it in country to make sure it was appropriate for community contexts over there, and worked quite deeply with the communities. It was a really challenging context. There's limited internet. 70% of people over there don't have a smartphone. Vanuatu is a collection of islands with very low levels of financial inclusion. Most people live closer to a volcano than they do to a bank. So that's the sort of situation we're working in. And it was very effective. Our platform was able to reduce the aid delivery times of Oxfam by 96% compared to existing processes. So it used to take Oxfam over an hour to get cash aid to each individual, and we got that time down to about 4 minutes per person, which when you're working with 10,000 or more people is a very serious time saving. It was really exciting. Quite a lot of challenges, but a good learning experience, I think, for us and the overall space.
And do you know what's going to happen with that now in the future? Will something come out of that that's more concrete and not just a project or trying, an experiment of sorts?
Absolutely. It was always our goal. I think the blockchain space has a lot of things that start off as like nice little experiments and don't really go anywhere. And it was always our goal to push towards something more permanent. So we're actually in the process of sorting out our long-term contract with Oxfam, and we intend to scale this across the Pacific region. More broadly, I think Sempo has realized that financial inclusion is far more important to people in marginalized communities, just beyond whether or not an NGO is able to easily get them cash or not. We were working with families in Vanuatu who had migrant relatives overseas, and they were sending money home to these families, and they're losing up to 20% of their money in overheads when they send money back to their families, which is pretty criminal.
Which is absolutely ridiculous. I completely and wholeheartedly agree. Now finish your thought.
It's insane. And so we don't want to just drop ourselves into communities and then just leave. We really want to have long-term presence and create long-term inclusion for these communities. And
absolutely, keep going.
And so, yeah, that's what we're going to shift to is, I guess, having a long-term presence inside these communities.
Absolutely. So banking the unbanked, that's the end goal here, and trying to do that as efficiently as possible so that the people who, at the end of the day, need to get access to that money can. Now, I do want to throw this over to Ziv. This issue of banking the unbanked, it's something that we see. How is a platform like Sempo doing this work that is helping, and how do you see that as a positive, and how do you see it as a necessity?
So you know, Sempo is really brilliant project. You know, it's one of those few projects where you see like people with boots on the ground. You know, they're going to the communities, they're investigating. You know, what do you need exactly, and then they provided it. And they bound with the Oxfam, which is a consortium of 15 charity organizations, so a big and powerful organization that could assist them. So I think like it's a very good example of banking the unbanked project. But we want to, you know, let's take a step forward to the future and start to understand like what orders we spoke about with Will Roddick in the past. By the way, we are celebrating now. This is the second the Good BLOCKTV episode, but in 4 in total. Before we gave it the name,
Absolutely.
The Good Block.
So Will Roddick, we're talking about grassroots economics, a similar kind of aspect
So
here.
Will Roddick, we're speaking about. So what's the end goal? Like where is everything is going? So 2 billion. So you know, let's look at the numbers. 2 billion people exist out of the financial system. And you know, there's economies and stage where you find like could be like 20 and 30% of the population is you know, underbanked or unbanked. And those organizations like Sempo and Will Roddick, they're going to that population, providing them with the financial services. Eventually, they have a digital wallet which is similar to a bank account. Then they have DAI in the wallet, which is basically a stable coin that they can trade commodities or some other stable currency. And those people start to exist. They are still outside of the banking system, but they are financially included.
They're at least being able to be in some sort of inclusion, which is actually, I would like to ask you, Nick, practically, how is it that you enter these communities and onboard locals to your platform?
Absolutely. I mean, and this is one of the things is for us why it's so important to work with an organization like Oxfam. We don't have a long-term presence in Vanuatu. We're very aware that, you know, as a Western-based tech organization, it's very easy for us to just inject inappropriate solutions into communities. So we work deeply with organizations like Oxfam to actually, you know, work out who the communities are we need to work with. And what we actually use in practice is a contactless payment card, much like the card you're used to using on a day-to-day basis, that has a chip inside it that is tied to a digital wallet, a blockchain wallet. So that when recipients use this at a vendor and the vendor has a very cheap Android smartphone with a contactless card scanner on it, they can easily make a payment. So we just hand those cards out to recipients. They don't have anything on them until they're in the hands of the recipient and then activated, which reduces the security risk. And it means that we can give payment capabilities to otherwise people who would have no access to any sort of technology whatsoever, which is something we consider really important.
So, I mean, and this is kind of our, I think, the perfect segue into things like Libra, what Facebook is trying to do with Libra, what Telegram is trying to do with the Telegram Open Network, in the ongoing conversation of banking the unbanked as we're speaking here. People, I mean, especially with Libra, we're going with this thought, with this mindset of people have nothing, they'll still have a smartphone. So something like Libra could help them, or the Telegram Open Network can help them. What are your thoughts? They can be either negative or positive when you think of these two platforms in that goal of banking the unbanked.
I mean, I actually think that Libra its mission is quite admirable in this goal of banking unbanked, but I think there is, to an extent, and I think this is reflective of the blockchain community as a whole, that we form our solutions around what we're used to working with, and the environments that we're used to working in are almost completely different to, you know, the reality of what unbanked communities look like. One thing we've found really common is that, with the exception of places that have a failing monetary system, like Argentina, Venezuela, people don't want to use Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis because it isn't stable with respect to their currency. And so that's the problem with using a global reserve like Ethereum or anything that's even stable, is that people don't know how much money they're holding on a day-to-day basis, which is why we use a stablecoin pegged to the local community. And I think that the fact that these sort of discussions are being left out of the overall narrative around things like Libra or any other sort of Telegram or anything like that is sadly indicative of perhaps how much attention is actually being paid to these communities that we're supposedly trying to work with, rather than leaving them as something superficially that can sort of be discussed in a hypothetical manner.
Nick, that was just a really nice way of saying that people are greedy and they're and they're not very much thinking about the people who ultimately need this money. But then I'd like to throw it over to Ziv as well. Same question, both negative or positive. How are these platforms, or can they at all? Are they helping the unbanked?
Yeah, so we need to understand this is a different scale of an organization. You know, we can't compare Sempo or even Oxfam to Facebook. So the positive things about Libra moving into the space and Facebook moving into space, they have enormous power. They have enormous power that can actually change the ecosystem. They can move into those states and do what Sempo does in a very large scale if they only want and were capable of moving forward.
Capable, it's just not on the list of agendas.
And you know, I'm not sure that it's not on the list of the agenda. I think, like, you know, the DNA of all those organizations is a good DNA, and I believe that they do want to move forward. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. There's a lot of issues with regulations, and now we heard that PayPal is leaving Libra. I'm not sure, you know, between us, I'm not sure that it's so bad for for Facebook Libra. This is only my mind, you know, because you know, PayPal basically, this is like a payment solution, you know, international payment solution. Libra is a payment solution. So there might be, you know, the combination between the two was questionable, you know, from the start, and there's some issues with competition law. But then on that, with their mission perhaps being, or even if it's not on their agenda, let's say it's not on their agenda at all, can their platform just in existing, help people that are unbanked? So for sure, you know, if you have the Libra wallet, and you can exchange your, your currency that suffers from a high inflation for the Libra currency. So imagine, you know, I was in Turkey like a year ago for a conference. 23 million people with 20 plus inflation, yearly inflation. So imagine living in that kind of economy. It's not easy. So what's the idea? Like, what's the problem having a digital wallet instead of your bank account? Okay, exchanging your salary right away into a stable currency, and then, you know, paying your merchants. You know, living in an economy which is stable. You know, some of those states, you know, have some lousy government that doesn't take care of the populations, yeah. But the population doesn't have to suffer from it. So you know, enabling, giving them access to that kind of technology, which, you know, by the way, is already used today, but exactly by the same economy that suffer from hyperinflation. Okay, giving them that opportunity, I think it could be huge. And you know, Facebook is exactly positioned to do that. I personally believe that Libra would launch. Okay, perhaps, you know, not globally, perhaps not like they initially imagined. I believe that it would launch, and we'll see.
And we'll see, and then it'll, a lot of potential there for sure. Now, Nick, last question here. With all of the projects that you've already had going on, that you've done, what's next for Sempo?
So, I mean, for us, it's really about a long-term presence in communities. So we're looking to engage in a bunch of places in the Pacific region, Vanuatu being one of them, also Tonga, and also looking to do some work in Kenya as well, which we're really excited about. These are communities that we've identified as places where there is this genuine need for the technology to connect people who otherwise are unbanked, and we're really excited to have a long-term presence there.
Thank you very much, Nick Wilson, co-founder at Sempo, for joining us. I'd also like to thank, of course, Ziv Kainan for breaking that down for us. For all you folks at home, keep on watching at blocktv.com for more cryptocurrency and blockchain-related news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.